Welcome everybody. Thank you for those that have popped your introductions in the chat bar. If you haven't done so already, it's always great to see what you're really looking for from today. As it says on the slide, my name is Ali Mellit. I am the Deputy Managing Director at the Northwest Leadership Academy. And I'm going to be your chair today for the session that we have with Perry. Today's session is really focusing on it's brought to you today by Collaborative. If you look on the bottom left-hand side of your screen, you'll see lots of little circles. We work together in the Northwest, a number of organisations. There's 6 of us in total. So there's obviously the Northwest Leadership Academy. There's AQUA, which is about Advancing Quality Alliance, Northwest Employers, Northwest ADAS, which is looking at Directors of Adult Social Services, the Innovation Agency, and MIAA. And we all work together in the Northwest, covering lots of different topics that we know will be very timely and a great way to step out from your day work and really have the opportunity to hear from new speakers, explore new topics that you can absolutely take back to your workplace. If you haven't done so already, if you've obviously found today, please have a look on the calendar and see the rest of the events that will be coming up to understand if it's something new or something you want to share across your network that people would like to join. As you can see, Kathy's been on the screen. There is a raft of people behind the scenes coming from all those organisations. So a massive thank you to everyone that's done everything to organise today's session and also to help to make sure today's session runs really smoothly. If we could just go to the next slide. Thank you very much. This is just the programme of today. And what you'll see is it's a full-on session. So the first thing I'd say is there's no official tea or coffee break. Please feel free to go and grab yourself a drink at any point during the session. I promise you, before you know it, it's going to be 12 o'clock. The day is a breakdown. We wanted today to be as interactive as possible. And you'll see why when you get to meet Perry. It's a breakout of lots of discussion points. We want it to be incredibly interactive and we really encourage your involvement in a variety of ways. There'll be group discussions, there'll be breakout discussions. There's the chat bar that we'd absolutely encourage you to put any questions, any comments, any observations in, and we'll be reviewing those during the day, during this morning. And also there's Twitter. So there is hashtag Collaborative Northwest. Again, please feel free to pass any comments and thoughts on there. And I'm sure Perry will talk about that when he starts his session too. Today is recorded. So that's one of the first questions that we normally get asked. So today's session is recorded. The slides will be shared later as well. So please try and concentrate on enjoying the day and enjoying the session. And obviously we will send out the recording and the slides afterwards if you then want to share that wider with your network. So I just want to introduce you shortly, just want to introduce you to Perry because at the end of the day, that's why you're here. For me, this is a real treat and I know that you will really enjoy today's session. I've had the pleasure of meeting and seeing Perry in action at a number of events over the last couple of years. And I'm just so delighted that he's able to join us today on this Thursday morning to kind of stretch our thinking and introduce you to new concepts, etc. Which is incredibly timely at the moment for all of us. As I said, you'll see when you see Perry, he's known for his passion, his energy, and his insights into the world of people and work, but particularly what lies in the future. He's built that expertise up with over 20 years in public and not-for-profit HR, covering technology and business change and learning and talent and OD. And for the last 2 years, he's been more of an independent practitioner or a selfie, which I love that term, aiming to change the world of work one conversation at a time. Fantastic mantra. As well as being a chartered member of the CIPD, he's advised them in many capacities, and he's been a guide for them on their online innovation platform about creating new practices and processes and protocols for the modern workplace. If you haven't seen already, he's an international speaker, he features out on TED, and again, really focusing on change and the future of work and the role that HR and people play in that. He's also started up a global learning community practitioners. There's 4 spin-offs in there in research and innovation, education, digital technology and partnerships. So I'm sure you're all really eager to hear from Perry. So no further ado, I will hand over to the self-described lifeaholic that is Perry Timms.
Thank you, Ali. Thank you for that. And I put up the old version of the agenda as a start, so that's not a brilliant technological thing. So Ali stepped into chair. Thanks very much. And yeah, we did meet a couple of years ago at one of those sessions where you have those very short, fiery talks called Ignites. So we are hoping to ignite a little bit of energy in you today and some really useful takeaways. But just in case, I thought I'd do the little Zoom housekeeping thing. Remember the mute thing. I did a webinar once to a CIPD branch who will remain nameless, and somebody forgot to mute and ordered a pizza while they were on. So that was a little bit interesting. So mute is helpful. You can have your webcam off as much as you like to, and then perhaps when we go into the breakout rooms, it might be really cool to put it on so that you can see your colleagues. But if you've got some issues with webcam, then obviously you'll have to keep it as it is. I do some work with the Ministry of Defence, and they're not allowed to use a webcam, so I don't know what they look like. I've worked with them several times. I don't know who they are. Anyway, so yeah, you can put your hand up and stuff in plenary, use that function, and the chat. Pam's going to be monitoring the chat, and I've given Pam the permission that if you want to ask something mid-stride and it kind of interrupts me, I don't mind that. So if you're like, oh, I really want to know a little bit more about that, if you want to do that in the chat, I'm quite happy for you to do that. So yeah, let's see where we go. And as Ali said, the collaborative Northwest hashtag, let's set Twitter on fire and make sure those people who didn't manage to sign up either feel really bad they didn't, or can like do it by Twitter osmosis. So I'll get into this, and I've just got a little bit of a scene set for you, and then we'll get into our first breakout around about 10 to 10, so that you can start to think and chat and plot. I don't know if you've ever come across the gaping void graphics, but they're normally little sound bites that are really quite profound. They're almost like 21st century philosophy. And I love this one where it said the most powerful force in the universe is human creativity. But I thought it is, but it's powered by us and our energy. So I just wanted to kind of make sure we had that connection in mind. You'll see all sorts of things about skills and intelligence and so on. But actually, energy kind of trumps a lot of that. So energy is something that we're going to focus on today. Tiny bit about me. So the organisation I run, as Ali said, is a little consultancy, and we just collect lots of badges and accolades, as you can see. We're proud to be a certified B Corporation and climate positive this year. The one thing I did want to draw out, though, is that we're a 4-day working week employer. We took the decision over a year ago to not work on Wednesdays, and the absolute pure reason for that is that we were worn out. So we said, look, we're going to pull the shutters down on a Wednesday to recharge. Now, we were in the privileged position, I suppose, of being able to do that. Not everybody can. But I can tell you now, it absolutely works, because we've got 120% more work, but we're doing 20% at least less hours. It's not maths, this stuff. It's not how many hours you put on the clock. It's what you do in the time you have. So I think it's more quantum physics. So keep that sort of thing in mind. You can bend time. It isn't a kind of mathematical equation. Anyway, so I wanted to start with this and your leadership role, because I've noticed a lot of you in the chat have already told me that you're in change and you're in people and you're in all sorts of roles where you've got the responsibility of looking after others and agendas and challenges and problems and issues. So I wanted to start with, well, where are we in all this? And this is a framework that was developed in the early 2000s by some engineers and analysts who were working at IBM. What they were looking at is business change through technology, something I'm really interested in and spent time in. And they were looking at how it changes both in its energy and its intensity, its complexity, and then in its activation and application. And they said, you know what, a lot of this depends not just on things like data and how many people are working in a certain area, but actually the kind of circumstances that people find themselves in. So I think there's a really strong link to energy here. And they sort of defined and distilled these almost like force fields that you find yourself in as either impairing or enhancing what you do and how you handle certain situations. And you might recognize some of these when I unpack them a tiny bit. I'm going to start in the bottom left with chaotic. Chaotic is where we didn't know something was going to happen. We could never know something was going to happen, but it happens and we've got to do something really quickly. I mean, COVID-19 in March 2020 was perhaps one of those things, and the edict to work from home where we could, etc. So it was unknowable. So we've got to do something. We've got to act. It's a bit like the fire drill or evacuation thing. You can't just go, hang on, let me get the manual, put on my fluorescent. No, you just got to get out of the building in an orderly, safe fashion. And once you've done that, you can then sense what that's done. Is everybody out? Are we in a safe place? If the building collapses, are we far enough? You know, all that kind of stuff, because you might need to respond. So this is chaos and crisis and that kind of intensity of operating here. And I know lots of people who were running organizations who didn't even think about their business continuity plan. They just acted in a way they knew was good for people, that kept them safe, that helped them balance their life and work responsibilities and isolation and so on. So chaos is a place where action is needed, but you need to quickly make sure that that's going to continue to take you to a good place. But if you're in chaos for too long, it's exhausting and it's dangerous. And our thinking process is somewhat impaired because we've just got this sense of adrenaline or even cortisol, the stress chemical. So in here, we don't want to be there any longer than we have to, but we do need to recognize that in that situation, action is all that we really need to start with. Our next port of call could be complex. It's not a clockwise fashion, but I'm going to go there anyway, because these two are in the area called unpredictable, where it is really difficult to even have suggested something might happen. And we probably spend a lot of time here right now, complex. Again, things we don't know enough about. Now, the difference between complex and chaos is there is quite literally no burning platform, but it's difficult, it's tricky, it's unknown, uncharted potential territory. So what we have to do is probe. We have to do something perhaps small scale that helps us with a little reveal of information that we can use and sense to then create a response and an adjustment to perhaps that initial probe. So I could imagine that lots of people are working on things like hybrid models at the moment, and they're probing, is it 2 days in the office? Is it one? And how do we do that? So they're probing and experimenting what's good for mental health, what's good for productivity. So it's emergent practice. It's something where we can explore because it's not crisis and chaos, but it's not easy because it's uncharted waters in many respects. Now that might lead us to some solutions that are brilliant, and we might jump straight into clear because we've got the model, got the technique and the tactics, and we just want to replicate that and get on with it. So that's what clear is. Recognizable best practice where we can sense it's the right thing to do. We can even categorize them, and this is where you get kind of manual formulated processes put into play, because the response really is just, I need to adopt this playbook and off I go. But we could find ourselves going into complicated. And this is the difference between complicated and complex, just to give us a real sense. In the complicated space, it's not that we don't know enough. We often have too many data fields or too much data to crunch, and sometimes conflicting information. So it's complicated. It's like, what do we do? Which is the thing we put the most weight into and the most emphasis on? So complex and complicated are different, because complicated often means you just got a lot of processing to do, which is why you have to do the sense, analyze, respond thing. So market trends, recruitment trends, predictive kind of pathways to how long it takes people to come in and become competent. That's complicated, and it's got a bit of complexity, but it's more complicated than anything. Now, what I found with this model is that when we're faced with something that's tricky, it helps if you know where you are. Is it a crisis situation? No. So you don't need to act immediately. Resist that urge. Is it complex? Is it new? Do we have any precedent? No. So therefore, it could be that we have to probe and experiment and do something small to reveal some evidence. But if the answer is, yeah, we've done it before, but not like this, it could just be complicated. So it helps you actually understand what kind of mechanism and what kind of energy you're talking about, because chaotic is exhausting, complex is mentally taxing, but physically draining too. Complicated can have the both, and even clear can get boring. If you're doing something repetitive, it's clear but repetitive. It can be really boring and your energy zaps because it's boring. So sometimes the variation and the complexity can stimulate you. So hopefully that's given you a good sense of an arrival. But I just wanted to touch on a few other things. And in fact, this happened this morning. I just literally picked up this headline in my feed on emails, and it talks about the state of adult social care and workforce in England, a report that's just come out saying, actually, it's getting more difficult to recruit, and there are more vacancies we're carrying in the social care sector that's having an impact across the whole field. And you know, it's not just lorry drivers, is it, that we're struggling with? It's clearly everywhere. So we've currently got that big issue staring at us. Now, is that a chaos response? Is that complex? I suggest it's probably complex, but there might be some chaos situations where people are very drastically and dangerously under-resourced at the moment. That's when chaos often kicks in. But it kind of begs the question about the pace of change, because just as we seem to have gotten over one change hump and we start to come into a bit of stability, another one comes along. So is the pace of change now faster than ever has been before? I'm just going to quickly pick on some of this, because if we look at the way businesses are changing in terms of their business models, we are starting to see some shifts from what we've known as stable, hierarchical, process-led, repetitive, very sort of formulated businesses into something much more on the right-hand side. We've got this really strong sense of purpose coming through, but actually we've got to experiment, because it means we've got to change processes. We've got to adapt how flexible we need to be because of the challenges we're seeing in the external world. So again, you can see that we've gone from perhaps the clear in the bottom right of Cynefin to actually perhaps a bit more of the complex in the top left. And that just seems to be an emerging norm. So, you know, the stability we perhaps crave won't be there. So we have to find small pockets of stability and lots of flexibility around it. So this kind of research has come through from the tech industry, but I think is beyond the tech industry, and showing where I think a lot of businesses are having to expend an awful lot of corporate energy navigating this kind of change and more fluid response to the challenges of government legislation, pandemics, staffing and more. So going back to the is change faster than ever. So a guy called Tom Cheesewright wrote a book called High Frequency Change. He surveyed 2,000 people, and the crux of it is most people think it's faster than ever. Most people say, yeah, I've never known change like it. It's ridiculous, it's relentless, it's pacey, it's complex, it's more challenging than ever. But he reckons there are two things going on, that it's a perception, not necessarily a rule. Because we've got two types of change that sort of compete for our attention, but don't always. The first is low frequency change, gradual ripples of things we may not even notice. But all of a sudden, if we kind of stop and reflect, we'll go, wow, that's all different, isn't it? And some of the stuff around generational attitudes might be that, where we sort of have worked with people of a certain age group for a long time, and then somebody comes in who's a bit younger, and we'll go, crikey, they want to change a lot, don't they? It's like, well, maybe they do, maybe they don't. Maybe a lot of change has happened and you haven't just noticed it, and somebody's brought it kind of links into this, which is a shift, if you want, in the whole arena of work and the constant nature of how we are seeing adaptive systems.
Sorry, Perry, we lost your audio for a couple of minutes. I'm not sure if you realise. I just wanted to let you know. So that
thank you. Blimey. So anyways, this high frequency change, low frequency change. I hope you at least got that bit right. It's a good job for some slides having words on screen, right? Anyway, so I've been interested quite some time in this whole sense of a sort of psychological and systemic kind of evolution in the world of work. And this comes from the concept of the 1950s and 1960s research into how humans evolve, and then furthered into the 70s, 80s and 90s into, I guess, again, the shifting nature of how we are as collective workers, I suppose. So we've gone this kind of a historical route from foragers, tribes, institutions, when we mastered the ability to communicate, write and printing press, to electricity, steam and power and so on. And now the frontiers are less of that sort of massive convulsive nature, but they're more almost spiritual. They're a more almost psychological advancement of us as human beings. So this trail tells us that we are headed towards something where we're at one with the universe. That's what wholeness kind of means. And so for those of you that are into sort of chakras and yoga and stuff, you're kind of thinking, yeah, that's it. That's when I'm at my optimized, self-reflective, brilliant kind of nature. But we can de-evolve. If we are in a situation where perhaps the circumstances around us are that we've got some pretty dominant force as a leader who's a little bit militaristic, we could become an institution or a tribe quite quickly, because the prevailing atmosphere creates that de-evolution in us. So this isn't the kind of we get there and erase the past. It could find itself fluctuating between these terms. And so even when we're faced with chaos, we might get a little bit back on this scale, but it's meant to show us there is an evolution on us, both psychologically, spiritually, and system-wise in the world of work. Now, that manifested itself in a really standout book in 2014, which some of you may have come across. Frederic Laloux, an ex-Belgian McKinsey consultant, wrote the book Reinventing Organizations because, as he said, I could feel something in the air about a shift in the way people wanted to be with their work. And he called out these new organizational energies. So this was one of the reasons I got interested in energy as a force beyond human beings and into systems and operating channels. And so the concept is this TEal organization you may have heard about, where Laloux's research looked into the psychological factors that I just shared about wholeness, and he realized that they manifest themselves in an organization that has a certain set of principles and mature attitudes and approaches. So the energies in those organizations are not vested in people at the top and it trickles down with, you know, delegated authority, but there's an almost like epicenter that permeates out. Teams that are self-organized and self-managed, teams who don't need job descriptions and very tightly controlled task lists, but can act fluidly and responsively to what's around them, and are drawn by that sense of purpose. Their commitment to doing well is beyond something they're being told by a manager, and is something about, I know why I'm here. I know what I'm in service of. And so this kind of characteristic has started to manifest itself in some organizations in the way they're designed and the way they operate. And probably the most famous one is in healthcare in the Netherlands, Buurtzorg. Well, it's not just in the Netherlands, actually. They're in China, Sweden, the US, Germany, and in the UK. So Buurtzorg is a team of home-based nurses who operate in autonomous teams of 12. This is the founder and chief exec, Jos de Blok, who spends most of his time touring the world now to share this disciple of what Buurtzorg is. So he doesn't really run the organization because he didn't need it. They're 15,000 nurses with a headquarter of 50 people. That's an amazing ratio between administrators and healthcare providers. And the model looks like this. They call it the onion model, and they have a self-managing client at the heart of it, a patient who has some degree of need for healthcare, but also has still the ability to run their life in a way that's commensurate with their level of ability and so on. And so they try and give as much agency and power to the individual to not be dependent on, but added value in life from healthcare support. So they build an informal network around them. They involve people in the community and neighbours and relatives and friends. And the Buurtzorg team don't just, administer, a bit of counselling or change dressings or help them with a little bit of therapy in a physical or mental sense, but they connect them. And they listen to them and they understand them, and they become known for their sort of socialized way of operating. And they're, of course, attached to formal networks. So if there are specialists they need to bring in, obviously the Buurtzorg nurses will do so, but they're there primarily to get to know this patient, to enable this patient, and to improve their quality of life. So this system is built entirely around understanding the dynamics of what people are capable of, their energies and their propensity, and their sort of leaning towards a system that is patient-centered. And then I wanted to come up with another example that's relevant to you in the Northwest. These are my friends at Salford City Council. And this is another example of using energies and knowing where you are and having leaders who fulfill a certain role. So right in the centre of the picture there on the floor is Debbie Brown and Sam Betts, who knew they had people capable of improving their digital service provision to the people of Salford, but who struggled to get the right projects out of the door and get the right products and services built, until they stopped looking in the usual places and invited anybody who wanted to help create a service that was digital, that supported communities and individuals, irrespective of their badge. So they came in, they worked in sprints, they built these products, and then they won Digital Council of the Year in 2018, because these two people knew where they were, they knew the circumstances they were operating in, and wanted to open up and invite active, energised participation. So I'm going to stop there and we're going to do our first breakout. I think we're on time ridiculously. So our first breakout really is for you to reflect on some of that kind of download from me. I'll just quickly check the chat window and see if we've got comments apart from me losing sound. Yeah. I'll just check this quickly. A big jump from and to. Some organizations want to move to, but actually hang on to the from setting because it causes frustrations. Yeah, Julie, great point. Yeah. That from and to that I showed you earlier on, you don't have to do it all at once. There are selective and slider-based scales that you can pick on. But I think the first exercise, it would be good for you to just sort of reflect on what you've heard there about managing chaos, complexity, knowing your own sort of sense of what energies are around that are driving your business in a particular way, the challenges, the pace of change, the opportunities, those kind of things. So I think there's quite a lot that's probably resting in your head. So the first breakout could be a little bit of share on what kind of chimed and sparked you most, perhaps what you felt most challenged about in some of those, and just review in those breakouts, where you think you're at. Where are you at right now? Are you in a lot of complexity, a lot of complicated, a lot of chaos, a lot of clarity, whatever it might be, and what hope and salvation and perhaps even some tactics can come from some of the examples and the stories that I shared. So we finished that at 10:10, and then we come back here and we've got about a 20-minute share so that you can do a few Q&As with me and just share a few pertinent points and comments and thoughts racing through your mind. Now, this is a bit where we're in with the gods of Zoom right now. We're like saying, please work breakouts, please get people into a safe space where they can talk, continue to be connected, and then come back. I'm going to do my best Wizard of Oz bit and just, sort of wave my hands a bit. And then I think lots of other people press buttons and you'll probably get an invite into a room quite soon. Right, as we're all coming in, and yeah, we are coming in en masse now. Now's a good chance to have a little think about what you might want to share in the sort of nearly 20 minutes that we've got, and we'll see how it goes. I'm quite happy that we let it go a little bit over the timings, as Ali said at the start. It's really about what we can share and get into. There's Sam. Look, I can see you, Sam, with your beautiful wallpaper kind of situation going on there. So any reflections, thoughts, observations, ideas, comments? Like I say, you can use the raised hand thing and we'll try and do it in that order, or unmute and jump in. And Twitter's been alive. Thank you, Wahid, for your tweet. I saw that. I'm following you now, my friend. Yes, Dawn, hello, how are you? Good to see you as well. Anybody want to share anything? I'll shut up now. Or not?
I'll go, Perry. Just sort of
thank you, Wahid,
because I think once someone breaks the ice, everyone will follow.
Get in.
So I think what came out really now, and I think it's quite prevalent around culture change and system change, is when councils are typically risk assured and there's a lot of red tape. And during COVID, we did see a lot of the red tape, as we would call it, go, and we achieved so much through distributed leadership and empowering individuals. But slowly, that red tape's come back, and it's sort of like, how do you showcase what we achieved in that period of time for more senior leaders, because we achieved so much, but then it just goes to show culture's come back. So it's like, what? How do we? It's that red tape we keep going.
That's a terrific question. I think if I had the silver bullet answer to that, Wahid, I could probably retire, because that's everywhere. What I've seen happen is that people have started to creep back into, solidifying it beyond the point of need again, because it's almost like, we've done that chaos crazy stuff now. Let's just go back into what we were before, without even questioning whether what was there before was optimal, efficient, humanly, whatever. So I guess we've all got a bit of an obligation to go, well, hang on a minute, all of it, some of it, the best bits of it, and what we've just learned. So I've just done a big piece of research where I've taken about 40 of the big thinking insights around from McKinsey and PwC and everybody, because there were lots and lots of people trying to predict what next. And it was getting ever so confusing and ever so noisy. And so I thought, I'm going to amalgamate this. Now, HR Zone are going to publish it soon. I've called it the State of HR 2021, because I wanted to give us a really strong chance of going, that's as much of a magnetic north as we're going to get, and a clarified position. And the good news is some of it is do not waste what you found during the pandemic if it has relevance and continuation into what we are calling the new normal, or whatever crappy phrase we want to come up with, because we have learned so much, we have adapted so well, that we need to say, hang on, old was this, temporary was this, is there not some way we can create a better version for both of them? Because the adapted responses might have been a bit loose in places, and we sort of turned a blind eye to a bit of governance that we probably couldn't and shouldn't continue with, but we don't need to just recoil back. So whether that's change teams, whether that's leaders in certain positions, I think the challenge is from anywhere in the organization to go, was it that good before? Because we've adapted. What are the best bits of adaptation we should continue with? And even if you have, I don't know, out of 16 processes, 3 of them that you know you shouldn't go back to, hold those 3 and continue to leverage those 3. Now, I think what also comes from this is we probably didn't measure the impacts of what we were doing in the adapted sense because we didn't have time to. That's the last thing we needed to do. We were in chaos, so we just got on with it and did it. But we have reflective time now where we should go, but actually, can we measure some of those gains? Because if we can stack them up and say economically, socially, environmentally, humanly, they're better, we need to prove that to stop people doing the retrospective back to comfort where they were. Because often that's what it is. People will be going back to what they were comfortable with, not necessarily that the system has been adapted for better, but they recognize the old school way. Don't give them that comfort. Agitate a bit, continue with experiments. I had a client in charity, and straight away when lockdown 2, I think it was, ceased and people went back into the office, they said, right, we're going to do hybrid. And from on top, they said, work from home Monday, Friday, and come in Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And straight away, the workforce actually came back to the leadership and went, what are we expected to do on a Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday then? And they said, well, that's when you can have all your meetings and stuff. And they went, we can do all those online. If we come in, we want to do high collaborative, high creative, high social, high human stuff. So can we flip that? And they actually sort of backed away and said, well, yeah. So in the end, they went to more like a 3-2 with a couple of days at home, 2 in the office, not necessarily in sequence, but split. And actually they proved it was better for them. So I think, you know, a bit of employee activism ain't a bad thing in this circumstance, because I think the intent and the outcome is the right one. We don't need to go back, because 2019 ain't going to happen again. It's 2022 onwards. So I think hold that forward-looking agenda. Hope that helps, Wahid. Good. Any other thoughts or observations from people?
Hi, Perry.
Hello.
This is Julie. Yeah,
hello,
I mean,
Julie.
We had a similar conversation. I suspect quite a few did, because many of us are public sector. So we definitely had a similar conversation. But we also talked about maintaining your own energy levels and how to ensure that other individuals don't impact on that. Which they do, obviously. And I think one of the things that we're struggling with at the moment as an organisation is, and I think you're aware of this because obviously we're doing some work with you, is we're going through local government reorganisation. And people are already really quite tired and fatigued and are going straight into this other period of change. And that's quite difficult. But I can already see that a default back to these processes, and I'm not sure that people are asking themselves that question, is, was it that good before? And the other thing we have is, and I suspect others are the same, is we have lots of audits. And one thing that I find quite frustrating with some of the narrative of our audits is they automatically start off on a negative. They're automatically asking about risk and I always want to look at a process that, and sometimes you just think, I don't need a process for that, but it'll be referred to in the audit, and then it's just it's an energy zapper, frankly, and I don't know how we get around that, to be honest, how we can change that from being negative to something that's a bit more positive.
So I think in the nicest possible way intended here, with respect for people who do that kind of audit work, because I wouldn't fancy doing it, most auditors are there to find something that's wrong. They are there to find something that's wrong. And if they don't, they feel like they've failed. And that's totally not what they should be. They should be there to look at the optimized way to be safe, productive, efficient, and everything else. So I would say on commissioning auditors, start with what are you actually here to do? Because we don't want you to spot things that are wrong. We want you to zoom out and look at the whole ecosystem and help us understand where we can increase the things that are holding us together and driving us forward and strongly orienting towards more citizen centricity or marginalized groups or whatever it is. Spot areas where we can amplify the work we do there and where we can accelerate certain things. Don't just look for a process that's a bit defunct. So I think if they zoom out a little bit, they've probably got a broader perspective than just trying to find something where you didn't get a signatory from a certain person at a certain level. And some of it might come in the way that you frame some of those levels of accountability and responsibility. So you could use your auditors by saying, we want to give people more spans of control and delegated authority. We want you to help us create a safe space for them to do that. So it's not about finding something that's wrong, it's finding something that's more powerful for them to step into that space so that they're positively enabling people rather than looking for gaps and crevices and things that you probably know exist anyway. So their value add isn't just to spot things that are wrong. I think give them a different mandate and ask them to channel their energy towards something that's more helpful to you in an efficiency and a governance and compliance friendly way. So yeah, I mean, I'd start with that. I mean, it's a bit of an ideal because your auditors might go, well, we're not here to do that. It's like, well, what are you here to do then? Who commissioned you? Because I think there's probably something in the commissioning brief we ought to revisit before we let you loose on our processes. So they should want to do good for you. So help them find the places where the most good can come from their input. Otherwise, their value is, like you say, it's just destructive rather than constructive. Does that help? But great question. Love an auditor. Make them smile a bit. Okay. Any other thoughts or questions? We've got a few more minutes still.
We've got Karen Wheatcroft would like to speak, and then Aruna Hodgson.
Fab. Thank you, Pam, for doing that orderly thing.
Hi, Perry.
Hello.
I think we talked a lot about how sort of like life and work kind of flips between complex and complicated and the other quadrants in there, and obviously in all those different aspects of what we do every day. I think, I work in the NHS, and I think we were talking about the uncertainty of the system change is really complex because we don't know, unpredictable in terms of what that will mean to day-to-day work in hospitals, etc. We've got the complicated where we're recovering services, so we kind of know what we need to do, but it's kind of unterritory, ground or whatever.
Yeah.
We also touched on the previous person's point about a tired workforce. There are exhausted workforce, really keen to do the right things by their patients, but we do need to give them that break. And then just to wrap all this up, sorry to go on, but I think distance is there to operate in chaos now, because what they've done is absolutely amazing in that chaos. But the worries and fears about winter and what's going to happen in the months ahead with flu in particular, let alone COVID, I think are real. And it's just really challenging in terms of how do you energize the workforce to sort of both prepare for the winter, but also try to manage the difficulties of recovery and that side. So I've not got an answer. It was just thinking about what we talked about earlier in the group.
I think we've lost Perry again for a minute, but back.
Ongoing broadband saga, won't bore you with it. Got the gist of that though, Karen. So you are absolutely right, I think, to start from the point of the energy of the people that you've got. And this was the whole premise about writing this book a few years ago before COVID came in, because we were already depleting people with very little regard for their regeneration needed. Now, again, I go back to my comment at the start. It's not mathematics here. It's quantum physics. You will probably get better from people if they're in a regenerated energy state than if they're just doing massively long shifts with absolutely no breaks and so on. And they'll want to do it because of their commitment to it, but they'll damage themselves in the process. So we do need to find a way where we can do this safe punctuating activity. Right now, the secret sauce to that, I think, comes in the tightness of teams. Right, so I've been saying to people all along, whatever you're trying to do post-pandemic, don't do it at just an organizational level and expect it to trickle down. Don't just give it to people at individual level, because it's a big responsibility, and that really will be chaos. Go to teams and say, right, you work out how you're optimal, when you're optimal, how you look after yourselves, how you support, enable and channel energies, because I think that's the secret. The teams is the place where you get them to construct this little force field bubble around them so that they can deflect as much from the outside pressure as possible and focus on them and what they're there to do and support each other. Now, I'm not just saying that based on my assumption. That's 40 years of research in teams that will tell you that's exactly how you get a high-performing organization. It is the sum of the parts of teams. So I think, if anything, you can enable, empower and equip teams to go, what do you need? Focus on that, and then tell us what infrastructure supports you to do that. Because I think that's the way to plan and plot this through. And I say plan and plot, it's very difficult to plan and plot. So just be as prepared as you can. That's what I'd say to people. Don't plan and plot, because it will never work out. Preparedness, be focused on preparedness. So I hope that helps, Karen. Awesome. And then I think Aruna was next.
Yeah, so I work in the NHS as well, and I was reflecting on how our kind of national processes and national bodies make it really difficult to empower and trust our teams, because we're continually being asked to report on this, that and the other, be inspected and so on. And so I suppose my question is about, well, how can we achieve change at a national level in order to allow our teams and our trusts to deliver work in the way that you've been outlining?
Yeah, totally that. So it absolutely is a system, right? I mean, there is a philosophy that I absolutely stick to, which is don't fix people, fix the system. It's always a system, but only people can fix the system. So I think we've got the beauty, I think, of the closeness of an autonomous, to a degree, NHS trust that looks after itself and has its own, jurisdiction and bailiwick and so on. Of course, it has to react to all those other factors. I'm not denying that, but it also makes it difficult to aggregate the effort needed to push up to the national system. Because who does that? Who coordinates that? Who challenges when it's oppressive and irrelevant and not helpful? It's very, very difficult to do it. So whether you can form some kind of alliance with nearby trusts that go, look, we're drowning under this, and I'm sure you are too. Can we devote a bit of resource to find something to push back on this, even just from our little coalition, that might make some noise, that might attract other people, that might then make the systemic change? But that all takes effort and energy. Now, the thing I do find is that when people are passionate enough about making a change, honestly, we are like, I don't know, some kind of conjurer of energy, extra energy to do that sort of thing. So I've looked at some research on people like special forces operatives who are in the most extreme circumstances, right? And they go 72 hours without sleep and all sorts of things, and it's not normal, but they are channeling something so directly that they could quite literally shut down peripheral systems and just focus on while they're there. So I guess I'm urging us to kind of think, find the people who want to make that pushback, give them the space and time to create the evidence and the coalition that can create a pushback, because only then will people start to listen. I think if you just go and say it's not fair, they'll just go, sorry, but get on with it. But if you go, it's not fair because, and what you're doing is damaging here, and what this is causing us is to lose here, they've got no choice but to react to that, because you're pushing with some really strong evidence. So it might take a bit of graft, but I bet you'll find people who are willing to step into that and create that case. So give them the energy to do that. Support them in whatever way you can, but you do need a bit of a coalition, because it's very difficult to push back on a machine if it's just one part. Yeah, hope that helps, Aruna.
Thank you.
Lovely. Did we have any other hands? I think, Sarah, you had your hand up at one point.
Yeah, I think you might have covered it, Perry, in what you've just said. I think quite a similar discussion to what's just come out. I was just saying, in a local authority setting, and sort of multiple fast-paced change programs. So the local authority I worked in, I think we've done sort of new ways of working quite well. We've got really, lovely environment and spaces created. We did a toolkit with teams to determine themselves when they're going to be in, are they going to meet face to face once a month, etc. So I feel we're quite sort of clear in that known section with that bit. However, we've got all out elections next year, so huge political pressures to deliver things like town centre regeneration, a lot of work around that field, and at the same time an organisational restructure, which obviously there's winners and losers in that process. So my question, which I think you've started to answer, is when you have multiple fast-paced change projects, where do you focus your energy, and how do you keep that energy going when I think people have said, people are shattered and they need a break, and we thought, well, it'll be after COVID, and now it's, well, it'll be after the elections, but people can't really maintain that real level of focus.
No, agreed. And every time you put something like that in the Sunday box, you're always losing the opportunity to actually make it happen. And in fact, I've done a podcast recently talking about change like this. And often we look at something, and I'll use this metaphor because it's the one that was in the book that I read about it, clearing your attic out of crap. You look at your attic and go, there's loads of crap up there, it's going to take me ages, and you ignore it until you have to move house like I did, and then you have to get a skip, and then it takes you days and it's awful. So what you should do is set yourself 15 minutes a day to clear something from your attic, and it will get done ever so quickly. But what also happens is you kind of get up there for 15 minutes and think, I might as well do an hour, and you make it done quicker than you possibly could. So there is something like a sort of a procrastination and a kind of scale thing that goes on with the change that you're talking about. So what I always urge people to do is say, absolutely map out all your change. You totally need to do that. And I'm doing that with the local authority right now. And then what you have to do is kind of draw as much as you can near to you and go, but what can we start doing that's useful, that breaks the seal? So that's not just pushed into a spreadsheet somewhere, that we do something worthwhile. And so we're starting to do that in this local authority that I'm working with in the Midlands. But in order to do that, what we've recognised is there isn't enough resource to do it all. So therefore, we have to stare into that reality and go, but we can't do it all because I haven't got enough people. We can't graft more people in, and it's never going to happen. But what you have to do is try and lift it above where people are currently, and create something where you can bring people in episodically in resource context or whatever to do the bit they can do, and almost stitch it together rather than have it as a constant flow. So it's a bit staccato, right, in terms of rhythm. But that's what we're trying to do, to break the back of things like city regeneration and environment, because it's so big that the small things can be done, and you bring the expertise in and you optimize it, because we are, and I'm not accusing anybody of this because everybody does it, we're really wasteful of people and time and skill and effort and so on, because we always look at it in a systematic, formulated, linear way. It's not. We have to tackle this stuff in an almost chaos type way, but not, dangerous, if you know what I mean. So I think map them out, know what they all are, size them up, know how big they are, and we'll talk about that in a bit, but make a start on some things, even if it's that you know how much resource you need to do the big thing, because at least you can start chipping away. If that helps. Yeah, okay. Real scheme. Lisa, we've got a hand up from you.
Yeah, and talking about energy, it's something that I really relate to with energy, because I do Reiki and chakras and all that, so it's something, and that spiritual level and the people.
Cool.
What I was mentioning in our group is talking about energy to any of my previous employers would probably blow their head off, and I'd be thinking, so how do we as HR people sell the importance of energy, and is there a measure for it? How do you demonstrate that this actually makes a difference, and how do you get them on board? Because I think you've got to have a really forward-thinking CEO, high-level staff to develop this in an organisation.
I'd agree. Now, what I have found is that no matter what our level of education, unless we are a neuroscience or a sort of, medical practitioner and stuff, we genuinely don't know how the body's energy system really works. We think we can put in 40-hour weeks, 60-hour weeks, 80-hour weeks, and it's fine. And it's not, because we're not built for that. There's some neuroscience research that tells you the brain is only optimal for 2 hours a day. Everything else is subpar. That's pretty dangerous if you've got a 3-hour board meeting. The 2 hours of optimal process at the start and the hour when they've got to make the decision, they're already impaired. But if they know that, they won't do it that way. That's how Jeff Bezos and Amazon work. They write a paper, you read the paper, then you have a think about it, then you make a discussion, and they do it all in a compressed period of time because they know this thing can't work for a board meeting of 6 hours in length. It's the stupidest thing in the world. So I think if we know some of that and we project that into situations where leaders have to be optimal, I think cast some doubt in their mind that they're not going to be as good as they think they are. Because I think we need to burst that bubble, and we need them to kind of go, well, that explains why I made that stupid call the other week that didn't work out, because I was tired, distracted, and came up with a crappy response.
It's like we've lost Perry again. Temporarily, I'm sure he'll be back. This is where we sit and keep our fingers crossed and say a prayer to the Zoom gods. Oh. Did anyone else have any thoughts that they would like to add to what Perry was saying in response to Lisa's comments and questions? No, is that a sign that no, we just?
I think it's like as Perry
completely bombed out.
Perry's back.
Completely bombed out. Where did you get to in my sort of almost pulpit-like speech of an answer on what you do with leaders? Did you hear me talk about the decision-making trail and there?
I think the last thing we heard was crap response, which that was the Zoom god.
How appropriate.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Lisa, going back to your point, I think we need to hit them with some science on how they are as physical and cognitive vessels in terms of capability, energy, and decision making particularly, so that they plan themselves a bit better around their energy sources. And when they start to see the results, because I know this kind of stuff does work, then they'll kind of go, actually, there's something in this, and they'll want to cascade it through and get other people to do the same sort of thing. So, you've almost got to prove their fallibility and their shortcomings and needs on a physiological and psychological basis. Whether that's they get some coaching from people who know neuroscience or what, I don't know, but you can assemble quite a lot of facts here about what the brain does and so on. So my task is to find some of that and share it, and then the whole group can get it, and we can bombard our leaders with some indisputable facts.
Thank you.
Awesome. Right, good. Have we got any more before we move? Because I really enjoyed that. I don't know about you. I hope that was kind of helpful stuff too. Right, thanks Kevin for the comments, all relevant to what we're all living now. Interesting discussion it is. Now, I don't want to burst the bubble, but I've got some more stuff to share with you about energy. And this comes from when I wrote the book, The Energised Workplace, and I did some research and I talked to people and I got hold of all sorts of things. And I thought, why don't we do this kind of thing? And I found some people did it and not everybody did. So so I'm going to do a bit of a share screen again. And I'm going to start with you. So this is you, but it's also you and people you work with. So from the book, we're going to talk about knowing your energy. So let's have a little look at some of the things. Again, you can pop this in the chat. chat, or it's just a semi-rhetorical question. But if you had to define what depletes and generates energy for you through the day, how would you map that out? I mean, I don't know if anybody has in mind something when it's like, when I do this kind of work, I just lean in and I'm bouncy, and it doesn't matter whether I've not had my coffee yet, I'm just into it. And then there are other things when I go and get a piece of work given to me, I'm like, oh God, that's just killed me. But there are things that do both to us, deplete our energy and spark us and inspire us and drive us. So how do we map it out? Here's an option. We can quite literally create a grid. And in it, we have energy boosting activities and energy draining activities at either end of the bottom of the grid. And then the intensity of the activity as low or high going up the other axis. I can never remember which is X and Y, but there we go. So I've just mapped out something of like, an average kind of day that somebody might face. They've got to do a speech, they've got to clear their inbox, they want to listen to a podcast on mental energy. They're going to an agile workshop, they quite like a bit of meditating. They've got to prepare for a promotion interview, and they've got to get a big report to the exec board. So these just, random things really, but they probably sound very similar to that. Now, the size of the circle is commensurate with perhaps the sort of time and in terms of, I suppose, effort you're going to have to put into it. So the meditating doesn't take much time, doesn't take much effort, but the big report to the exec board does, and preparing for the interview kind of does, but delivering the speech is big. You've got to prep for it, you've got to go and do it, you've got to hang around for a bit. And then the agile workshop is just an hour, and the inbox clearing is whenever you can fit it in. Now, the idea is by mapping them on this grid of what boosts you and what drains you, you give yourself a fighting chance by looking at that going, now, when's my energy peak and trough, and when do I get sleepy? When do I? Because you can actually, without having to rejiggle your calendar, think about what you need to do to stimulate yourself at the time that you've got to do those draining things where there's kind of high intensity, but actually it's going to be hard work, because you've got to do your speech at a set time, you've got to go to your workshop at a set time, but you can listen to your podcast whenever you want, you can inbox clear perhaps whenever you want, you can meditate whenever you want, you can even do the preparation for the interview whenever you want. So if this was me and I'm looking at this, I'm thinking I'm really good in the morning. Like, there's a couple of hours when I first wake up when I could probably solve the world economic problems if I really put my mind to it. So I'm going to do that big report before my energy gets all disappeared and drained, because actually I know that going to the workshop is going to give me a spark. And that's in the afternoon, and I know the speech is around lunchtime, so I'm going to do 3 hours on that report. And quite literally, you segment your day, not necessarily about urgency and importance, they kind of come into the equation, but you do need to know about your energy too, because if you over prepared for your speech but miss the report, you're going to be stressed out later and tired, and you won't do it as well. So don't always draw yourself to what you know, but draw yourself when you know your energy is going to have the most impact on the work that you do. So yeah, just something to bear in mind. And what I've seen and heard people do since reading the book and stuff is they do this on a daily basis. They kind of go, right, I'm going to map my energy 2 by 2 grid. How big is it? How intense is it? And then kind of think about when to do things and set themselves time parameters and space to do that kind of stuff. So that's one thing you can do. And if you take that mapping, there's other factors I found that people reported give them a spark, a real lift and a boost to their work. And so I categorized them. And so in the book, there's a whole chapter devoted to these, because people told me, like, when I need to spark, I know that if I do something like this or it happens to me, naturally I come alive again, even if I'm a bit tired. And so these kind of things came in, and so I'll just kind of unpack a few of them. A lot of people said they get really energized by learning something new. A few people, though, said they don't like being incompetent. So therefore, their counter to that is they want to learn something. So it's not necessarily that it sparks them, but feeling incompetent drains them. So whatever your stimulus is for that, I think, learning often is a real underrated energy boosting activity. And so like with the little team that I've got, we've got a thread on Slack and a bit like Teams, and it's just about cool stuff we find that we think is useful, and we just drop it in the learning channel. And what I found is people who have sort of had a pretty busy, intense time often drop into that and just drift into that, because it's a nice little mental stimulus after having a really intense activity. So yeah, learning's good for the brain. It kind of creates plasticity and so on. Discovery, that's kind of new stuff. So that's where you might want to do some experimentation or some research. People often get a real kick out of that. Oh, what do people think about this? I know, I'm going to put a poll on LinkedIn. Innovation, just trying something new. Relationships came up a lot. Lots of people said, I've got my people that I go to when I'm a bit flat, and I just need to check in with them and just say, hey, how are you doing? And it's literally a social exchange. It isn't even with any specific work problem solving in mind. They just need to connect to another person who might just give them a bit of a lift and a spark, even if they're only talking about what movie they watched at the weekend or whatever. You know, relationships are really crucial to energy boosts, and particularly if you're a bit down. So that's the kind of thing to bear in mind. Lots of people talked about variety. Lots of people said, when I've just got this monotonous thing that I'm doing the same thing every day, I just lose the will to live. Well, punctuate it then, create some variety, do some learning in the middle of it, whatever it might be. Flow is that lovely state where people are like, I can't believe sometimes when I'm really on it and I've got my real clear game head on and I'm just writing a paper and it's all flowing. I love that sensation. So often people try and find a little bit of flow, even if they're struggling in a particular sort of day or circumstance. So all of these are unpacked in the book, and I won't unpack absolutely all of them, but people get sparked by different things. So the concept in the book was, find what is a spark for you, and then just set yourself 20 minutes a day to just do some of it. If it's about, I want to, recenter on the purpose of why I'm here, then give yourself 20 minutes to do that. Stand back, have a look at what's going on, talk to some people, connect with the purpose. You'll probably find it starts to create a kinetic effect, and you pick yourself up and you find a little reserve of energy. So what I'll do is I'll send a little summary of these from the book, so you don't have to buy it. It's not a pitch to buy the book, but you can start practicing and playing with these so that you can start thinking, which one gives me a kick and what else gives me a kick, and bring these into your 20-minute a day, just little refresher exercises. And the teams can often do the same thing too. And then this leads me on to the teams. So this is an example of our team. So there's now 15 of us, all remote, working very different patterns. One of the things we got energized by was not having policies and set rules and stuff, but having agreements that we cast in our team that define how we want to be with each other. So we crowdsource these, and then we continually review these. And we have a little session probably about every quarter where we go back into them and just say, oh, are we living these? Like, these are kind of like our values and stuff. Are we living these? Are we exemplifying these? Do we need to adapt them and refresh them? And it just keeps this kind of code of conduct alive. And it is pretty energizing to A, set this up, and B, go back in and check and go, oh yeah, we are doing this and we are looking after each other. I mean, I posted on LinkedIn yesterday, I had a bad broadband day, as I'm having today, and it really got under my skin, and the team were terrific in knowing that and giving me space and helping me clear my mind and whatever. So yeah, so you might want to set a team agreement just to give yourself something that's real and energizing and just frames, I guess, how you want to be as a collective of human beings. But how do we assess what we've got to do in mapping out our energy levels, in looking at what sparks us for 20 minutes and how we agree to work as a team? Time boxing or work sizing. So this is a method that comes from agile and technology industry. And I saw it in operation in a brilliant tech company who are the least stressed tech company I've ever seen. Nobody works overtime there. It's all brilliant, and they are optimal on quality, because every single task they do, they give it a time frame. Quarter of an hour, half an hour, 1 hour, 2 hours, 4, 8, 16, 32. Now, if it gets to a task that's about 132 hours or 264 hours, that's a big task. And it's probably a massive project rather than a task. So the clue is they often find themselves in the 0.25 right up to perhaps about the 4-8 hour task kind of window. But this gives people a fighting chance of going into not only their energy, but also how long it should take them to do a certain amount of work. I did this a couple of weeks ago, and I thought to myself, I've got 8 hours of work time to do here, but I've mapped out 32 hours of work to do. I'm stupid. Why do I even think I'm going to bend time to do that? So I thinned it down to about 15. And you know what? I did it in about 12. So yeah, but if I'd have given myself that massive amount of work, I'd have felt really bad about never achieving what's on my to-do list. So instead, I was kind to myself and got some stuff done, and I love ticking stuff off. So this is a really good way of getting people to be more accurate in resource allocation, I suppose, and just say to people, look, before you even dive into your workload, how much are you going to get done today based on what you know you have on the books, so to speak. Easy for knowledge work, not so easy if you're on a busy ward or whatever, because you just get hijacked and moved around and stuff like that. But you could do it as a reflective exercise afterwards. What did I spend my time on, and log it, and then kind of journal it and think about where that time goes and what effort it calls on, and how you can then balance your energy through. Right, conscious of time, we are just about to then go into our next breakout, but I just wanted to leave you with this reflective exercise that you could find yourself in. So often this happens, particularly in remote working. We sometimes look at the inbox, we look at the calendar, and we sometimes go, what did we actually do today that added any value, that made a difference, that achieved something? So in the book, we've come up with like an individual, but also perhaps a team level impact board, we called it. And it looks like this. So you put your date in, you describe your mood. How was I today? Was I a bit flat? Was I very vibrant? Was I a bit distracted? What was the mood like? And what was the greatest accomplishment? And actually kind of think, what was the greatest accomplishment? And just define something out of the day that you thought made a difference to somebody else, or whatever it might be. But then unpack energy peaks. Where did we spike and what caused it? Was it a bit of a chaos thing that I had to solve a problem for somebody, whatever it might be? Where did energy really help us? So where did we push through because we were sort of energized and sparked into it? And what boosted the power bank? Did somebody send me something nice? Did somebody say something nice? And then also, what caused the slumps? How did flagging energy impair us? Talking to what I said to the previous answer about mental cognition and power, and what drained us today. And these are just really interesting ways of putting a different perspective, not just on tasks, but on energy. So again, these could come into play. So I will stop sharing now because we're going to go into our second breakout. While you're coming in, I did want to respond to Dillis's quote, because I think it's almost poetic and philosophical. This, think about this principle: only those who can truly control themselves can claim to control things beyond themselves. This means control over one's body, attitudes, emotions, and actions. Dillis, you've distilled it beautifully there, because the sense of being out of control starts with the fact that you've sort of let it permeate into you. And if you claim a bit of control back over you, all of a sudden you feel like you can control other things, that you can pull strings on. So definitely there's an attitudinal shift in that one. Yeah, so again, open to comments and reflections, and I will pick up Sandra's point, which is all sounds great, but what about the constant being pulled into Teams calls, unplanned, hijacked, all that kind of stuff? Again, if I had a silver bullet for that, I wouldn't be here now. I'd be in the Bahamas or something with my feet up. But there are ways we can control and contain some of this. But it does require, again, a few people to make a concerted effort to do it differently, to then ripple it out to other people. I won't leave you hanging on that one. I will give you some clues and tips and tricks on that one, including the whole asynchronous and synchronous challenge that we're not talking about enough, because there are ways that you can go away from that meeting could have been an email, or that email should have been a meeting. Do you know what I mean? There are those two really nasty things that we've got to get better at. Right, so anybody got any thoughts, observations, comments, queries, questions, whatever? Because we've got until past for you to do that. So I'm all ears and open to, again, thoughts, observations, challenges, and whatever. Any takers?
Well, mine's not. I'm taking us back to your time plan, and which is great. And that taking time to this. I don't know what I'm telling. I'm sharing something here with everybody. My email box is absolutely dreadful, and I have so many red flags. And I do try to allocate time to go back to those things, and often that's a Friday, to be honest with you. And I do get shuffled through them fairly well, but it's actually, mine's out of control now. And I've got to a point where I thought, you know, the best thing to do here is to kind of start afresh. It'll build back up to what it is, because I seem to be naturally really bad at managing emails. But I thought, shall I just start at a particular point in time and delete everything, and assume that if it didn't need to be deleted and it was urgent, someone will get back in touch with me about it?
There is that.
Is that just too chaotic?
There is a theory, actually, and you're right, you kind of outsource prioritization to everybody else. That is a tactic. And in fact, Miranda from Salford has done exactly the same thing in a tweet. I've just picked it up. So yes, so what I would do is, because it might feel a little bit risky for some people, just create yourself a folder that says inbox from to, click them all, drag them all across, clear it, right? Just clear it. Because there is a theory that the more emails you send, the more emails you'll get. So if you're responding to them all, you'll get responses back to them all. So sometimes an utter handbrake purge is the only way to clear your decks. But then be kind to yourself after that, because if on a daily basis, and there are some techniques for this, 3 times a day is the only time you go into your inbox. 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock, right? You could get into that rhythm, but clear it. Absolutely clear it. Now, if you want to, you can create a folder structure where you swipe them across and you don't have the perils of archive retrieval, which is never nice, but you don't delete them so you feel a bit risky. Just get them out of the inbox. Now, in order to get them out of the inbox, what you probably need is a bit of a tech tool to help you, so that you've got a to-do list. Your inbox should never be your to-do list, because that's the thing you're carrying around with you right now. I mean, I look at some people, they've got 8,000 in their inbox and like 950 not read. I'm like, why does that not drive you mad? Because it would me. I equate that to running a marathon with the lead boots on, like you're in the diving suit. You're carrying that around with you every day. You don't even know you are, but you are, because it's in your mind, it's in your head. Where's that email? And you've got to search it and just get them out of your inbox. So answer them if you can, delete them if you need to, move them aside. And if there's action, copy whatever it is you've agreed to as text and put it somewhere else. So whether that's Microsoft's Planner tool, which is a task-based thing that sits in Microsoft Teams, whether you use the Outlook-based task management tool, whether you use Google Keep, whether you use a proper project management application like Trello or anything like that, don't have your inbox as your to-do list. You'll thank yourself for it as you move to that kind of rhythm. Now, I've got into the habit of doing that. So I run a zero inbox near enough every day, and I have done for about 6 years. And I feel so liberated by it, because it's the only way to keep yourself from having that inbox being this spectre that always just grabs at you and calls on your time. So yeah, do a purge, Judy, go on, and then let us know how you get on. All right.
That's great. I like the action. Copy my actions and put it into, because actually I don't really do that. So that's a good idea. I think I might do that. I'll do that. I'll set up another folder with the dates and lock it all in there.
Yeah, swipe them away. Yeah, it's the best tactic. Good. Any other thoughts or observations? Like I say, because we've got until about 1:30 for any reflections or comments or thoughts on that one. And if not, I'll answer Sandra's point about constant meetings. Looks like I'm going to do that, Sandra. Okay. So we're all as bad as each other, but everybody is worse than you. They hijack you. They see a gap in your calendar. That gap might have been so you can actually go and have something to eat, but they'll book you for it. So actually there is a trick. Book yourself a lunch in your calendar. Just put it in. Because actually a lot of people will probably go, oh, they're on lunch, I won't bother them. I mean, it sounds like the stupidest thing in the world, but it genuinely works. Now, I'm going to talk in a bit about some concepts of how you can give yourself more space and thinking time and stuff. And you're like, oh my God, he really has gone nuts now, because I'm never going to get that. But you absolutely need to. And I'll tell you why in a bit. But there are some things that we don't need to fall victim to. So if somebody wants to book you for a meeting, rather than just click accept, if you're a bit doubtful about whether you should be there or not, go back to that individual and just go, I'm not going to respond to this yet. I just wondered what you wanted from me in this meeting. It's a short message, and actually it just forces somebody to just say, oh, well, I thought you should be there because, and you can go back and go, actually, no, don't need to be there. But copy me the actions afterwards if anything comes up. And actually a lot of people back away from that and they won't insist you're there. So it might take you a couple of minutes, but it means you might save yourself half an hour or an hour. So it's genuinely worth questioning that. The other thing is, if you're really struggling for time, and I've done this with clients actually, and we do it as a team, where you just can't get everybody together, you want to make an important decision, but it's 3 weeks on Thursday before everybody's got a slot in the diary. That's telling you it's never going to happen. So what I would suggest you do there is you deal with the meeting in a different way. And what we've done is we've started to create asynchronous relays. I'll record a video about what I want to pitch to that meeting, knowing nobody else can be there. And I'll send that to the people who watch it. It's only normally 5 minutes pitching the thing, maybe linking it to a document or something. Then if anybody's got something else to say, they'll do their own video and they'll post it, and we'll watch the little 2-minute response they've got. You can see what I'm getting at here. Gradually, you have that meeting not in real time, and you get it done quicker. And you don't have to waste the time coming together. And if you do, you normally get to the point where, like, we've only got one thing to decide. We only need 10 minutes. We can do that Friday morning, can't we? Bang. So actually break out of meetings and do information or intelligence sprints and exchanges. And it really, really does work. So I've got a client in local government, not surprisingly, who's an HR director, and I can never get the time with her and nor me. So she records me an audio file now, and I type up a response and do some stuff and send it back to her. And then we have 5 minutes where she just gets me to tinker with it. And honestly, it's revolutionized how quickly we can work. So asynchronous and synchronous, make sure you know when you need the two. Now, the rule I think to apply is, if you need something creative because it's a breakthrough solution, you probably do need to get people in the room at that time. But for decision-making, normally type meeting stuff, a challenge whether you even need a meeting or whether you can break it up. So there's a couple of thoughts there, Sandra, I hope you can get people to play into. And my experience of this is, when you try it with somebody, they actually quite like it. So they inflict it on other people as well. And before you know it, it kind of viralizes. So actually it can be quite nice for you to make the stand, for you to be the epicenter of it shifting, and creating something that's a little bit easier to manage. Good. Right, thank you, Sandra. Yes, that's good. And thank you, Steph, about using shortened meetings. That was the other thing I would say. Is if people come in and say, right, it's a 3-hour meeting, you can just say, well, I can be there for an hour. So what can you do about that meeting that means that hour is the only time I can give you, so the only time that it makes sense to do so. And before you know it, that meeting has suddenly gone from 3 hours to an hour, because people overestimate meetings a lot. Yeah. Okay, cool. Right, I've got the last little bits to share then, if nobody else has got any thoughts or observations. I am going to take us to a sort of a level, I suppose, where we're looking at the systems that we operate both individually and organisationally, I suppose. So let's do a quick slide share and have a look at these. And that takes us through to quarter 2, and then we've got 15 minutes of further chat. So here we go. What about those really crucial, important things that need focus and attention? And the irony is, we are like time pool for complex things that we need thinking space to do, and talking to the point that Anne, you made earlier on about leaders. They're the same. They never get enough time to think about things, which is why they're always making decisions on the fly a bit. So how to create spaces for what's called deep working time? Well, there is a method and approach, and I did pick it up in the book, and it's called deep work. And it's built around this philosophy. In the connected era, it's quicker, it is more complex, and we have less time and space. So there are two ways of looking at the work you've got. Is it deep work or is it shallow work? And quite literally just try and keep that almost like polarity in mind. And the deep work is that high intense, high accomplishment needed. So, you know, pretty tricky stuff, and it is tougher, but it often leads to things that make a difference. So complex problems, new products, breakthrough, research, innovation, all that stuff is normally pretty deep. And you got all the shallow stuff. You probably look at the shallow stuff and go, oh my God, I spend all my day doing shallow work. And if you do, there's probably an imbalance you might need to correct there, because it's this busyness as a proxy for productivity. It's not, it's literally swatting flies rather than installing the lamp that attracts them to it. So yeah, sending emails, inbox management, repetitive queries, calendars, and excessive meetings. So talking to some of the things that we've just said, there are different ways to do it. Now, this all comes from work of a social scientist called Cal Newport, based in the US, and he wrote the book called Deep Work, and he's also written some other stuff about tech. Really, really interesting mind he has, and he's really into understanding the pressures that we're under. So it's for everybody that's involved in using a screen to do their work. And he calls deep work eliteness, high quality work, time spent by intensity of focus. It's the stuff we don't get enough time to do, but it's the stuff that when we do it, it has a ripple effect on all the other things we do. So is normally of high value, but it's difficult to engineer into our day. So how do we practice it? And so some of this stuff you can see I've already sort of touched on. Map out your day and start thinking, hang on, what's deep and what's shallow? And then the important thing for you as a team particularly is to share that with people and just say, look, I've got to do a really complex piece for the CEO today, so I'm going to spend 4 hours on that. So you normally might get me, but you probably won't today unless it's really urgent, because I've got to sink myself into this. People are ever so forgiving of stuff like that when you socialize it, because they might get into the habit of doing the same thing too, and they might even say, can I help? So you never know, you might actually get some input to it too. But then to be kind to yourself, you've got to stop looking at LinkedIn and Twitter and everything and just drop them, lose them, get rid of them, shut your phone down, turn your inbox off, even go offline if you dare. But we waste something like 25% of our time by disconnecting from the thing we're doing these little shallow things and then coming back in. It's just a mental reframing thing that's not working in our favor. So actually, if you block some time off and it absolutely says, you know, deep work, no meetings, people can't book you. You can just legitimately go, no, because I'm doing this. It's more important. I don't care what you think, whether I should be at that meeting. And so actually it can bat away a few of those requests. But it does require that sort of brutal scheduling. And as I talked about the 3 times email thing, that's probably just a bit of variety, and it keeps you on top of things. And then the important thing I think I come back to is know when you're best, when deep work works for you. Because if it's not when your energy is in sync with that kind of task, it'll actually be harder and you'll be distracted and you won't want to do the deep work. So know when you are tuned, I guess, to wanting to do the deep work, and then you've got a perfect recipe. But yeah, you've got to put a bit of a protective coven around you in order to do it. And that leads me then onto the system, because I think you are then trying to create a system that works for you, but there is a system around you. And I've got a tactic or two here to help you. The first one is the operating model that we've got at PTHR. And the reason I've put this up is because what we've done is we've looked at our entire business. And so you could look at your team's entire portfolio and range of things to do. And instead of them just feeling like a load of random disconnected things with a project here and some business as usual here, and it's got no anchoring point, we've categorized all the things we need to do to operate as a business and to keep ourselves focused. So we've got our own internal processes, we've got our vision, we've got marketing. You can see what it says on there, our products, our content, our client work, our environmental impact. So we've even put that in there. And our side hustling and ideas, all underpinned by the people practices, how we operate, the systems we use, and our principles, which is not letting people down and what have you. And the reason we've done this is because when a piece of information comes in to somebody and it's useful, they know where to put it. They know whether it's a marketing insight, whether it's to do with products, whether it's to do with the environment. So we've organised our Slack channel, our folder structure, and even got some ownership attached to these, what we call stacks. So for example, Catalina owns the internal processes and platform stack. So if somebody says, you know, there's a client wants us to use this piece of software and we don't normally do it, they'll put that in that stack, and Catalina owns access to platforms. She'll create an account for us. She'll come back to the individual because she owns that stack. That's her responsibility. So it never gets just added to somebody else's work. It's shared because people have ownership. Now, this is the thing I think really helps us with energy and clarity too, because instead of nobody owning it or everybody owning it, somebody owns it, but it's clear, it's easy to follow. And so this has really helped us navigate through complex times and information exchanges. So yeah, you could model your teams or offices or functions operation by creating the stacks that are right for you. They won't necessarily be the same as these, but it's where information goes, where ownership sits, and it all has a linking but not complex way of kind of mapping out what goes on. So we take some of the energy cognitive load off by trying to be as simple as possible, but without being too simplistic or too dispersed or too tight. So yeah, that works for us in terms of creating an energy kind of force behind what we do. But then if we want to look at creating a system for the team or the organization, even if you wanted to, and I've got a model to show you that, instead of going, what are people good at, go, what energies have we got? You know, we've got people who are, you know, creative energy people, learning energy people, whatever it might be, and map them out. You know, when do people come alive? So get people to tell you that and then map it out and just see what you've got. So instead of competencies, go with energies and just see whether that is even correlated to your competencies. It sometimes is, but sometimes not. What I found when we've done this is that people suddenly reveal stuff about themselves outside of work, where we've got people going, yeah, I do some graphic design. It's like, we didn't know that. You could tidy up all our slides. Do you know what I mean? That just kind of comes through. But then also think about the future. Think, what are we facing next month, next 6 months and the next year? What energies do we need? Do we need more application on task? Do we need more innovation? Do we need more decisiveness? Do we need more research? And map those energies out so that you've got what you've got and what you're going to. Sounds obvious. And then within it, start drawing your organizational lines. Who could sit where? Who could have what responsibility? Who could have what spans of control? How do we structure that? And so you then potentially create some OD type models where it's based on energy, not on competence or role descriptions. And then you choose your best fit. And throughout it, be thinking about people's leaning towards discovery, innovation, flow, variety, whatever it might be. Because this is going on. I use this slide a lot because it's the right one to describe that we think everything sits in neat boxes, but it doesn't. It's an illusion. But it's comforting to some people to think, this is where I sit. When in reality, on the right, these people assemble to do things, disassemble and come together in different formations all the time. Deloitte says pretty much the majority of the world recognizes that it ain't in the functional hierarchy anymore. It's in these connected networks. So we can enable more of that, I think, but people can sometimes feel a bit disconnected if they haven't got like a home base and they're constantly in a state of fluidity. So we need a bit of the both. And the way that's done is like this. So this is actually an OD model for an organization. It's only about 150 people, and it features in the book, where we had a problem. And the problem was the energies were in the wrong place. We had directors with energy, which is built on networking, connecting with people, market opportunities, whatever it is, managing project teams, building products. And they didn't want to do it, and they hadn't got the energy for it, and nor did the teams. The teams felt choked and stifled and misdirected and underloved. So we worked out the energy map. We then mapped the future energies, and this is what came out. We want all those director types with their energy towards the outside doing that. So we absolved them of project management responsibility, full stop. They were out there brokering deals, finding markets and opportunities and creating partnerships and all sorts of cool things that they loved doing. And we supported them with some specialized functions like business intelligence, finance, bid teams, whatever it might be. But then the products were built by teams that came together to build a product, then disassembled and built another product because it was in the energy sector. And suddenly we found the harmony that we've been missing for a couple of years with this organization. I saw the head of OD about 2 years ago, and it was 2 years after we did this work. And she was brimming with the fact that this worked, because she said it went against everything she'd ever been taught about how you design an organization, but it was absolutely the right thing to do for this particular company. So they mapped themselves based on energy. Competence came into it, don't get me wrong, but they started from energy. And they've now got an expansion drive. They've got more people working for them. They've retained, they don't lose as many people. And actually these directors are really happy because they're not being turned into project managers. They were never there to do. So that's how energy can actually manifest itself in a model which has got both flexibility and stability, and is non-threatening to positions of power, but enables people who are more nimble and adaptive. And that's it. That's it from me. So again, I think I'm on time. In fact, I'm ahead of time. So we've got a bit more time to share some stuff. So I'll stop sharing and put us back in screen, and see what's been going on in the chat for a start, and then also see if anybody's got any other thoughts or observations and so on. Oh, Dillis has put another philosophical quote in. Dillis, me and you should talk, I think. This may help. We might wonder that scares people about times of change and paradigm shifts. Do we fear that the future might be worse than the past has been? Yes, we tend to. Or rather are more afraid of the void. Yeah, we don't like that either. Of that moment of certainty and vulnerability. Yeah, we don't like uncertainty. When the old assumptions are fading, but we are not yet clear about the new. Definitely, people need to know where they're going. They need to know what kind of future they're headed towards. We need the confidence of a trapeze artist, I like this, who has to let go of one swing and momentarily hangs helplessly out in space before grabbing onto the next. He knows his own momentum will carry him forward, and the swing he trusts will be there. It's that void. Cool. Wonderful, Dillis. Thank you for that. Yeah, so we are trapeze artists. Yeah, it's terrific. So I am going to pick on a couple of points here. So there are some keynotes I've given where I say to people in the audience, what's the biggest problem you've got? And I get this big long list of stuff. And often I just kind of go, well, actually, the problem is uncertainty. All of the problems they've listed come from a point of uncertainty. We're uncertain about funding. We're uncertain about where we're going to work. We're uncertain about the structure of leadership, so the government has decided in its wisdom to do a review of NHS leadership just at the time when actually we need people to be really focused and getting on with stuff. I mean, it's like you couldn't have made it up, could you? So there are lots of those uncertain things, and they're not that helpful to people. But in the space that Dillis is talking about in uncertainty is where we can go and grab it and go, well, if it's uncertain, we can try and make it as certain as we need based on what we need, and so you can actually fill in some blanks for people, because if leaders tell you they know everything, they're lying, obviously, because they don't. But in fact, even the hive mind doesn't know everything. We're still up against a lot of unknowns. So very profound, Dillis. Right, so any more comments on any of that? OD by energy, and using deep working techniques, and just generally any thoughts or observations?
I don't know about anybody else, but certainly for us, I think we're very tied by job evaluation.
Yeah.
Although actually, I've started speaking. I should have put my hand up because I think Lisa's just appeared on my top screen, and you had your hand up before me.
We'll come
Lisa.
up to that. Thank you.
So, shall I let Lisa go? Yeah.
I think
Lisa's just carry on?
Yeah, she's encouraging you to go.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Lisa. Okay.
We'll come to Lisa in a minute. But
I mean, one thing that I do notice within our organisation is I think sometimes we've got some individuals who want to give more, can give more, but are actually just held back. And a lot of that links to job evaluation, and because there's a fear that if they're doing more, then potentially we'll have to reevaluate jobs and pay more. So I find that it's actually quite a hindrance. It did its job for us when it was first introduced, which was about equality and pay. But now I feel as though it's actually a real hindrance. And actually, I loved the diagram that you showed us about having a different type of structure. I think that's absolutely great. It's it's just a really difficult one to get people on board with, and particularly I think in the public sector, because it's so hierarchical, and even when you try to move away from that and reduce those levels, people tend to default back.
They do.
Seniority.
So there's a lot in there, Julie, that I would like to respond to. So starting point, I think, for any of this kind of change is go where the energy is for that change. So if you've got people who absolutely will dig their heels in and don't want anything other than a job description, don't start with them. Go with teams where people are like, I don't mind a bit of ambiguity and fluidity. I like the variety. I think my role depends on that now. So let's break up the old and recreate it. So go with intent. And actually prove it in that environment, and then see what impact that then has on other people who have been a bit stuck in their roles, because they might then go, is this the future? And I will be ruling myself out of it if I don't kind of play in that space. Because if they're then self-imposing that restriction, then when their job no longer exists, only they've been to blame for that, because they've never stepped in to do the adaptation type thing. So I'm not saying dangle the spectre of automation over them, but often those roles that are most well-defined, algorithmic, repeatable roles are likely to be automated, certainly from a clerical sense. So, you know, if people are not thinking about versatility and diversification, they should be, is what I'd say, just to plant that seed, but go with the intent and get the people who want to do some variable things into that space. People in this room probably know my view on job descriptions. I think they're possibly the most irrelevant thing we've ever come up with in HR, because we came up with them with such good intent, but they just tell people a load of things about a robotic replicant of something, and not really about the outcomes, the impact, the diversity we need in that kind of role, the creative thinking. They're not built for future possibilities enough. And I know that's difficult to project, but we do need to start thinking this role is going to change because the world does. So why don't we build in some future capability and stretch and enhancement so that people can own that and engineer it themselves? So if you can come up with something that's less a job description and more an impact-based, outcome-oriented, results-focused, that brings out the qualities of the behaviors that matter, the diversity that you need, and so on, I think you'll get people much more excited about playing into a job description that represents that, rather than a tick list of stuff with a load of random percentages and KPIs on. Actually, I don't think anybody ever got out of bed and thought, what a wonderful job description I've got. They just don't do that. So make something that's almost like their manifesto, their reason for being. And that sounds a bit grandiose, but I think it's worth giving a go. So yeah, reinvent job descriptions, go with the intent, and those people that are in hierarchical positions who don't want to lose the hierarchical position, I think there's a really good conversation to have with people, which is why you're here. Are you here because you like the power, or are you here because you like the responsibility? Are you here because you're a specialist? Because what I did with the charity is we asked those questions, and some people opted into specialists, some people opted into what they called enterprise leaders who ran teams, and other people said, it's not for me, and walked away, and they're better for it. So call it a leadership amnesty if you want. I'd give that a go. All right, Lisa.
Thank you.
No worries.
When you talk about energy, and you said about mapping the energy on your last diagram.
Yeah.
How do you determine what's good energy? You know, do you look at a person and determine a measure of energy, with good energy, bad energy? You know, how do you measure it, and how do you map someone somewhere based on energy?
So in the exercise we did, we didn't judge it. We were fortunate enough that it was quite a tight organization, as in it was about 100 people. So the HR director and the head of comms and a couple of other people who we brought in knew people well enough to go, they come alive by doing this. They're really they're into that all the time. But that was our only initial map. And then we had to go out and test it by saying, is this you? Tell us what else, and so on and so forth. So we did do some consultation on it, but people thought it was a bit weird that we were asking about energy and not professional capability. It's like, no, we know that. We know what certificates you've got, but what brings you to life? Where's your future? How long you want to be here? So some people felt a little bit sort of perhaps like, oh, what's going on? But actually it revealed a lot more than we knew. So we didn't make a good or bad judgment on any of it. We just wanted to know where their energies were, what brought them to life, what sparked them up, what they hated doing and was a real drain. So actually a few people came out afterwards and said it was quite cleansing. Nobody had ever asked them what they hated in a job, and when they listed it, they're like, if you can get rid of those things, I'll be well happy. And in the majority of cases we did, because they were in the wrong space. They weren't where we really needed them to be optimal. So we took away some of those bolt-ons. Some of them went to other people, some of them went to almost like a system rather than a manager type of activity, those nested teams. We brought in some really good systems into them. We didn't just create artificial layers of management. So that's how we did it, Lisa. Is that right?
Yeah. Can I ask, in terms of like energy, is this, sorry, my dog's barking in the background.
I thought so. Energetic dog, yeah.
Yeah. And what does it tie in with like the Myers-Briggs sort of personality type, and in where people get their energy from that type of thing? Does that sort of link? I'm just trying to get my head around what you're looking for.
So I'd be careful about Myers-Briggs, partly because Myers-Briggs is coming under a lot of questioning now from people saying, I'm not sure it's as strongly valid as it makes out to be. But nonetheless, some people define themselves by characteristics in Myers-Briggs and talk about themselves being as an extrovert or introvert, whatever it is. And as long as they can back it up and validate it, I'm not so bothered whether they use that term or not. We've used a psychometric tool called the Game Changer Index, which is built very differently and is built around proclivities, which is really shorthand for where people's energy is at, not their skill and competence. That kind of sometimes follows, but where people's MO is, where they really come into their being, so to speak. And in that are 5 kind of types. There's a game changer who's a catalyst who wants to create new things all the time. There's a strategist who said, well, that's great, but you've got to have a plan for this. Where's the vision that's leading this to, and how does it connect to other things? You have an implementer, which is somebody saying, well, you lot can talk all you like, but I'm going to make it happen. You got a polisher who says, well, you can make it happen, but I can make it happen beautifully and sustainably. And then you've got in the middle of it a playmaker who said, you lot can keep talking all you like, I'll bring it together and I'll make it work. So what I've seen is that's the nearest psychometric I've ever come across that maps energy in a way that actually makes sense to the stuff that I've been talking about and found. So Myers-Briggs, I think you can use, but this Game Changer Index, that's the one.
Is that what it's called? Game Changer?
The Game Changer Index, yeah. It was built by a recruiter because they kept getting asked by people, can you headhunt this kind of X factor person? They were like, what do you mean? They're like, somebody who can change the game. And so they looked into it and they found people like it, and they modeled their archetypes and behaviors and preferences and skills and all sorts of things. But they found actually that they were often dangerous on their own and needed these other 4 roles around them. So they found they were always successful when they were surrounded by the strategist, the implementer, the polisher, and the playmaker. So actually it was a really nice reveal, because it proved that, you know, you don't just go out and hire a brilliant individual to do that. They need that team around them. So, you know, it'll be a bit like my football team, you know, trying to get Bukayo Saka in. It's like, well, you've got to get other players of Bukayo's quality around, otherwise he'll not get the service he wants. So sorry to use a football metaphor there, but yeah, anyway, so the Game Changer Index is one I would say is well worth looking at. Awesome. How are we doing for time? 1:45. Any more? I think we've got a Mentimeter thing to do later on, haven't we, about our people's energy? Is that on one of the slides? Yeah. Shall I put that up and we'll do that, and then we can wrap up with Ali after that? Should we do that?
Yeah, no problem. I'm happy to share my screen if you want, because I've got the Menti open, so it's just a bit. Yeah. So it's just a bit of feedback around what's been useful from today's session. If there's anything that we can improve on, and obviously probably the tech, which we'll work on, and any recommendations for the future. So if I just share my screen. I'll present that, and then we can see what people are responding as and when they come through. So you will need either your mobile phone, or you can use your laptop as well, or any other device.
Go for it, Alana.
In a moment, I'll get it up for us. Here we go. So if you just go to menti.com and the code at the top of the screen, if you can just pop that in, and then we can start the slides. There's only 3 questions, so don't worry, it won't take too long. And just I can see everyone on, well, a lot of people on my screen. So if you just give me a thumbs up when you've, and I can see there's some hearts coming through at the bottom. So people are starting to get logged on there. Hopefully my internet connection's not very stable, so fingers crossed it'll last.
We're all suffering with that today.
I know.
Need a bit more energy in the web, don't we?
Thursday.
Yeah.
Getting to the end of the week, it's tired.
Yeah. The internet's wearing out.
Brilliant. So I'll move us on to the next question. I can see that we've got people still joining us. So firstly, just kind of what's been the most useful element of the session? And that can be anything, breakout rooms, having Perry here, anything that you feel. You should just be able to free text that.
Oh, yeah.
And then we can start to see what's coming through.
Oh, Dillis is off. See you, Dillis. We'll be in touch about a book of poetry on this.
Fabulous. Got loads coming through there.
Lovely. It's a good little word cloud, that, isn't it?
It is.
Nice to see me in there. That's nice. Thank you. Brilliant. Look at that. Energy at the middle. That's good, isn't it? this would be a bit of a flop if that didn't appear there.
I know. And we can keep this open afterwards if anyone wants to respond after, and obviously we can share, Perry, these visuals with you.
Lovely. I'm going to take a screen grab of that. Thank you. Ah, brilliant.
You can get it to keep still. It's constantly moving.
Yeah, people are inputting still.
Yeah, definitely. Brilliant. So like I say, it'll still be open, and you should still be able to respond if I move on. But thank you everyone for getting involved in that question. Next question, is there anything we could improve on? Anything at all, from the logistics down to how long we give you in the breakout, the topics? And you can be brutally honest because it is anonymous. We will not know who said what.
Good thoughts there. Yeah, some good ideas. Like them. How to sell energy to the CEO. I like that one.
Should start to see it scrolling in a moment.
Yeah. Nice. And I've got a few follow-ups that I'll do, so I'll send those through so they can get sent out to everybody. So I'll pick up some from this as well. Nice.
Brilliant. And then just finally, do you have any recommendations for anything in the future? It can be to do with today's session or absolutely anything else that you would like to see from the collaborative, because we are currently working on, so we've got a few events coming up that are left in this year's programme, and then the team are behind the scenes working on next year's programme, so there might be something that we can add in for that. And if you would like us to bring Perry back, obviously you can let us know in here as well. And there we go, Perry again, already on the screen.
That's nice, thank you. I'm happy to come back. Yeah, some good stuff in there. More me, that's nice. Brilliant.
Give it a couple more minutes if anybody else wants to respond. But like I say, it will be open for probably another week, or you can always email us and let us know your thoughts. Fabulous. We've still got a couple more coming through. Hopefully, we did obviously used to do the masterclasses face to face, so you never know. Hopefully we'll all be able to get together at some point. Things are happening now, aren't they? More face to face.
Yeah.
We can only dream, Alana, we can only dream.
Fabulous. So I'll close that off here. I'll stop sharing. But like I say, it is open. If you have any further thoughts or any questions for Perry, I'm sure we'll be able to get them answered. But I'll hand back over to you, Ali, Perry, if that's all right.
Thank you, Alana. So I'm very conscious I'm the only thing between your lunch break that you're going to take, rather than go and dive straight into your inbox following Perry's fantastic advice. So massive thank you, Perry. I'm sure you could see on there the love for you, how it's really resonated. Really resonated. It's very, very timely at the moment with lots of things happening across health and social care and local government. There's lots happening, so it's very, very timely. I could definitely sense the activist within you to try and drive that change. So also a massive thanks to everyone behind the scenes that make these events happen. They don't happen by accident, and obviously there as well as help with all the technical bits and pieces as well. So for someone that has been on them and also been on the other side, a huge amount of work goes into making these happen. So thank you, and hopefully you can see the comments at the end make it really worthwhile, while these events are absolutely definitely worth all the effort to put them in there and hopefully raising the energy. So really, like I said, anything I'd really like to think about is, what do you want to take from today? So the easy thing is, you take the time out, you invest it in yourself, and then as soon as this finishes, you get sucked straight back in. So really what I want you to reflect on are there any real light bulb moments from what Perry talked about today, and when you're in your group discussions or in chat bar, where you think, I want to go away and read more on this, or connect with a group to talk about it more, that I can then start to think about, what does that mean for me, and what does that mean for my team or a wider organisation. So things like, gosh, I've made some notes as we're going through about, how does all this stuff maybe help support the conversations that are going on in your teams at the moment about hybrid working and coming back into a different way of working, because we're never going to go back to what we had. start to think about that within that hybrid. Does that mean this is a fantastic opportunity to look at the roles themselves and the structure that you have? Be brave and try and look at tackling that at that point. Going back to lots of people in the discussions are talking about, actually you had that energy and that empowerment in a time of chaos. So how can you create that when you don't actually, out of a time where you don't want to be chaotic, because we know over time it will burn your energies out. Thinking about, again, as one of the tips Perry talks about that resonated with me, of actually get your teams to work together and ask them when are they optimizing, when are they working their very best, and get them to tell you so you can then help them shape that. And also about the power of finding people who are really passionate in a cause that you can work together with your coalition to try and drive that change. Don't forget things like energy mapping, understanding what your energy quotient is. What is it that gives you that spark to go into the next task or the next activity? I know lots of you in the chat bar really loved the team agreement. I saw something very similar last night on LinkedIn about a group of brownies, which I thought was amazing, that they were already talking about how they wanted to work together, which I really loved. Similar sort of thing. We talked about, obviously, energy and impact boards, about giving yourself time as space as an individual that you can be the best version of yourself. How can you get that time to think without feeling guilty, that you can then come back with that energy and then help lead the team or lead work with your team to make that change. Obviously, one of the things I'm interested in is about the recording of meetings. I've never heard that one before, Perry. So try and get, it's a bit like a Twitter of meetings, isn't it? 140 characters, but in a very short video blog. And then again, encouraging yourself and your team to think about deep work versus shallow work, and how could that change? And obviously the last one, again, which I think created a lot of interest in people, is the controversial job descriptions and competencies and the frameworks around them, and actually really flipping that on its head and think about the energy, how that could change your org design, and how you can use different sorts of psychometrics that kind of give that different steer and really start to change that dialogue. So there's lots and lots of great ideas in there. As I said at the very beginning, the slides will be available, the recording will be available if it's something then you want to share across the rest of your network and team. So once again, a massive thank you, Perry. I think you've given people lots of food for thought over their lunch break. And like I said, the key thing is not to lose that energy when you go back into work. Exactly. Thank you. The next masterclass that we have booked in is in a month's time, is the 11th of November. And this one, I'm going to read the titles, make sure I don't get this wrong, is Leading for Social Change, How to Change the World Without Breaking Yourself. So if that's something that resonates with you, please feel free to register and again, share it through. I can see Lana's just popped it in the chat bar, also with a book which covers all the other masterclasses this year. And as Lana just mentioned, we are shaping what next year's, the titles of what next year's ones are. And ultimately, the most successful events that we have like this is where you tell us what you really want to talk about. And then we can reach out and find who are the leading authorities, the ones that are thought leaders and will disrupt our thinking, that we can bring into this space. And who knows, maybe actually in a room next year. So on that note, I'm going to close so you can all get back to doing what you love and where your energy really is. Thank you so much for your time, and please continue to share your feedback on Twitter. Many thanks.